The crowd and the void. Have you ever been surrounded by people and still felt completely separate from all of them? You hear voices, you see movement, everything looks normal, and yet somehow none of it reaches you. It is a strange kind of loneliness because it does not happen when you are alone. It happens when connection is supposed to be possible. In a crowded room, on a busy street, sitting with friends, doing everything that should make you feel present. And still, there is this quiet distance inside you, like everyone else is living in the same moment together, and you're just slightly outside of it. Sometimes nothing is technically wrong. No one rejected you, no one left. But for some reason, you still feel unreachable, like there is glass between you and everything else. And the hardest part is that from the outside, no one would know. Missing a place that never existed. Have you ever felt homesick for something you cannot name? Not a real place, not just a feeling, a pull towards something distant, familiar, and impossible. Maybe it comes from an old photograph, a certain kind of light, a street you have never walked through, a room that only seems to exist in your imagination. And somehow, it already feels lost. You miss it before you ever had it. It feels like memory, but not your memory. More like an emotional echo, something your mind recognizes even if your life does not. And there is something beautiful about that feeling, but also painful because it creates a kind of nostalgia with nowhere to go. You cannot return to it. You cannot fully explain it. You only know that something inside you responds to it. And still, it feels real, real enough to miss. Conversations that never happened. You ever replay a conversation in your head, but not the one that actually happened? The better one, the cleaner one, the one where you said exactly what you meant. You think of the line you should have said, the pause you should have taken, the answer that would have changed everything. And in your head, it all sounds perfect. Sometimes it is a small moment, a message, a joke, a sentence you wish you had worded differently. Sometimes it is heavier than that, an argument, a goodbye, something that ended badly and never really stopped repeating inside you. Your mind keeps returning to it like it left something unresolved. So you rehearse, you rewrite, you imagine different responses, different endings. And somehow, those imaginary conversations can start to feel more vivid than the real ones ever did. Because in your head, you have control. Maybe what you're really chasing is not the conversation itself, but the feeling that somewhere inside it, there was a version of you that could have been fully understood. Becoming someone else around others. Have you ever noticed that you are not exactly the same person with everyone? Not fake, not dishonest, just different. With one person, you are lighter, with another, quieter. With someone else, more guarded, more agreeable, more distant. And most of the time, you do it without thinking. You adjust, you respond, you become readable in the language the moment requires. Maybe that is normal, maybe that is part of being social. But every now and then, you become aware of it. And when you do, it can feel unsettling, because you start to wonder which version is really you, the one who speaks the most, the one who holds back, the one who makes people comfortable, the one who disappears a little to fit the room. Maybe all of them are real. Still, there can be a quiet loneliness in realizing how many versions of yourself exist that no one person ever fully sees. When time suddenly feels too fast. Sometimes time moves normally until it does not, until one random moment makes you realize how far everything has already gone. You look up and somehow a season is over, a year is over, a version of your life is over, and you do not remember it happening. That is the unsettling part. Not just that time passes, but that it passes so quietly. Most days you do not notice. You wake up, do what needs to be done, move from one task to the next, live inside routines, but then something small breaks the rhythm. A smell, a photo, a place you have not seen in years. And suddenly time stops feeling abstract. It feels personal. You realize there are moments you thought were still nearby that are already impossibly far away. Because time did not just move around you. It moved through you. It changed you while you were busy living. Missing who you used to be. Sometimes what you miss is not a person. It is yourself, not your current self, the older one, the one who felt things differently, wanted different things, believed certain futures were still possible. Maybe you were softer then, or braver, or less tired. And now when you think about that version of you, it does not just feel like growth happened, it feels like loss happened too. Because becoming someone new always means leaving someone else behind. You remember old rooms, old habits, old thoughts you used to have so often you assumed they would stay forever. And now they belong to someone you technically still are, but can never fully return to. You're not remembering a stranger, you're remembering a self you once inhabited from the inside. And every now and then, you miss that exact emotional shape. Wanting to disappear, not to die. There are moments when life feels too loud, too demanding, too present. And in those moments, what you want is not an ending, just absence. A pause. A place where nothing is expected from you for a while. No messages, no decisions, no pressure to explain yourself. Just space. Enough space to stop being reachable, to stop being needed, to stop being visible for a little while. It is a hard feeling to describe because people misunderstand it easily, but it is not always about despair. Sometimes it is simply exhaustion. The kind that makes you want to step out of the frame for a moment, not because you hate life, but because you cannot carry it at full volume anymore. So you imagine disappearing, not forever, just enough to breathe again. Feeling empty without a reason. Have you ever felt empty without knowing why? Nothing terrible happened, nothing specific caused it, and yet something inside you feels quiet in the wrong way. Not peaceful, not resolved, just absent. You try to look for a reason, you scan the day, the week, your life, but there is no clear answer. And maybe that makes it harder, because pain with a cause at least gives you direction, but emptiness without a cause gives you nowhere to point. So you keep moving, you answer people, you do what needs to be done, you stay functional, and still, there is this blankness underneath everything, as if some part of your interior world has gone dim for a while. Maybe it is not dramatic enough to talk about, so you let it stay unnamed, but unnamed things can still be heavy. Fearing no one knows the real you. You can be seen every day and still feel unknown. People can know your name, your habits, your voice, your sense of humor, and still not know what it actually feels like to be you. That gap can be painful, because being visible is not the same as being understood. Maybe you have tried to explain yourself before, tried to show the more fragile parts, the complicated parts, the things that do not fit into easy language. And maybe they listened, but only up to a point, only enough to recognize the outline, not the depth. So after a while, you begin to keep certain things inside, not because they do not matter, but because they matter too much to be reduced badly. And that creates a strange fear, the fear that the person everyone interacts with is only ever a surface. Feeling something you can't name. And then there are the feelings that do not fit anywhere, the ones that are too specific for language, too mixed, too strange, too human. A feeling that is part sadness, part wonder, part longing, part awareness, part memory, part something else entirely. You feel for a second while looking at the sky, hearing a certain song, standing in a place at the right time, remembering something you cannot fully recover. And you know it matters. But the moment you try to name it, it starts dissolving. Words get close, but not close enough, because some experiences seem larger than vocabulary. They live in that space between sensation and understanding, between emotion and meaning, the loneliness in a crowd, the nostalgia for what never existed, the life you rehearse in your mind, the self you become for others, the speed of time, the people you used to be, the wish to disappear for a while, the emptiness with no reason, the fear of remaining unknown. These experiences feel personal, they feel isolating, they feel like proof that something inside you is too strange to explain. But maybe they are not proof that you are alone. Maybe they are proof of the opposite. Maybe they are reminders that beneath all our separate lives, we are quietly meeting each other in the same invisible places.